Too. Okay, so I feel a tiny bit more refreshed. Thanks for being patient with me. Do you know what patient means? Patient means you're willing to wait. You're willing to wait. It is a really good quality to have. It's really good if you practice patience. But you know what? We're not here to talk about patience, and I'm getting a little impatient when I'm talking about patience when we're supposed to be reading about friendship today. Okay, so see how I did that? Impatient. I wasn't willing to wait. Let's see what we got going on here. Okay, looks like it's good. I have a pretty good signal here too, right? So we are going to read the story, the next story, and I was so excited about this one because, well, let's just get to the story, right? It's a story on friendship, and that's why I like it to begin with, because everybody likes a story about friends, right? Everybody likes a good friend. Do you remember what our story was yesterday? Our story yesterday was on responsibility. It was on responsibility. And who was being responsible yesterday? Adam and Eve were being responsible yesterday, if you remember. And they were being responsible how? They were being responsible because they were taking care of everything. And let's remember what they were taking care of, because we don't want to rush past what they were taking care of. They were taking care of all the plants and all the animals and the water, keeping the water clean. So they were really taking care of a lot of things. And do you want to know what else Adam had to do, what he got to do? Before Eve came along, God not only asked Adam to take responsibility for all of those brand new living creatures, and at that time, did you know that they could walk around with lions there and giraffes there? Did you see the picture of him washing the giraffe? Look at that. See him? See, he's washing the giraffe there. I would love to wash a giraffe, I think. I know I would love to wash a giraffe. If he were very nice, I would be afraid if he weren't very nice, but I would like to wash it. And look at that. He's laying right next to a lion. What an awesome place to be. Do you remember what paradise was called? It was called Eden. In the story here, it's called Eden. That was paradise. I would love to live in paradise. Wouldn't you love to live in paradise? Where's paradise? That's what we want. Find paradise on the map. I need to ask my assistant, find paradise on the map for me, please. Okay, let's get reading our story on friendship, though. So yeah, wouldn't it be cool if you got to name all the animals? And maybe that's the reason why they have right names, right? I mean, because when I was looking up names for my next class in the Bookless classroom, we were looking up names and like kind of what's in a name. And it seems like there's a lot in a name. My name means Little Grace. Do you know what your name means? You should find out what your name means. I think it's really cool to know what my name means. Okay, but today we're talking about friendship. And this is a friendship that's in the Bible that actually a lot of people have a lot of questions about. And they're just friends. Why do you have to have so many questions about just being friends? I don't even know. But it's a really, really good story. And it is such a special friendship. It teaches us a lot about friendships. So it really is. Because this friendship lasted forever. And when you have a real, true friend, no matter what happens to you two, you could live on the other side of the planet and you will still have a special place in your heart for that friend, no matter what. And that's what I really like. That's what I like about friends. You know what I don't like? That I still have the same flowers over there. That's what I don't like. But we're not complaining this morning, are we? Get my head in the shot. Okay. Friendship. What is friendship? Friendship is having someone to play with and to help and to watch over. Okay. All right. So friendship, two stops. Look at that. Friendship is made up of two other words, isn't it? Friend and ship. Those are two different words. You know what we call that? We call that a compound word. That's a big word for some of you, but maybe not so much for others, right? Compound word is what it is. It has two words that make up a brand new word, friendship. Friendship, two steps in that word. Now, let's get back to the story. What's friendship about? Well, let's read it again, okay? What is friendship? Friendship is having someone to play with and to help and to watch over. I think that's so important to have somebody to watch over you, right? Because sometimes it feels like we don't have anybody to watch over us. All of us feel that way sometimes. Sometimes we all feel like we don't have someone to watch over us. And you know what that means? Sometimes it feels like we don't have any friends, right? I know. Sometimes even I feel that way. Like I don't have anybody to watch over me sometimes. And I'm a big girl. Okay, let's get to the story. Many years ago, the very first king of Israel was King Saul. So Israel is kind of on the other side of the world, but it's there. It's still there. Yeah, it was a little it's the same place. They changed names a lot, but it's the same place. I was just thinking. His son, the prince, was named Jonathan. Jonathan had seen David fight the giant Goliath. Now, that's another great story. I wonder if it's going to be the story on courage. I don't know. We have a story on courage. It could be the story on courage, but that could be a different story too, because there's lots of people in the Bible who have courage. But you know what else? There's lots of people in the Bible who make mistakes as well. That's what I find kind of interesting, because there's Saul in the Bible, and he was a king. And let me tell you something, he's a character, and not in that good way either. But let's get back to Jonathan. His son, the prince, was named Jonathan. Jonathan had seen David fight the giant Goliath. When Jonathan met David, he liked him and wanted to be his friend. I wonder if David wanted to be Jonathan's friend. Jonathan wanted to be, when he met, he wanted to be David's friend. I wonder if David wanted to be Jonathan's friend. Do you think he did? I do. Because I like to think that way. David played the harp. So see what the harp is right here? The harp is got like, it's a beautiful, beautiful instrument. And normally it could be small, but it could also be very big. So I could sit down and play it. But you could see it's got like a decorative bar at the bottom, and it comes around and to the top. And you can see what that does is it holds the strings there. So there are strings the other way. There are strings on this harp, and see his hand there? See David's hand? His hand is strumming. So it's like a guitar that's in a frame is what it's like. And usually the frame is very beautiful. It's a very beautiful instrument. Like guitars can be very beautiful, right? Or sometimes pianos can be very beautiful. Grand pianos are very beautiful. So some instruments can be very beautiful, right? Some instruments can look kind of ordinary, but some instruments can be very, very beautiful. The harp, I think, is one of the most beautiful instruments. And I think that's why they picked it, to show that David was playing it, because he always played music for kings and even for God. God gave him that talent, and David used to like to give back his talent to God. How do you give back your talents to anybody? How do you give back your talents to anybody? You use them. That's how you give back your talents. I like to think I'm giving back my talent to teach by using my talent. I'm teaching, so I'm giving you my talent. That's how you give back what somebody gives you, right? So David had the talent to play music, and that's what he did. He played music, and he played music for his friends, and he played music for kings and pharaohs, and he played music for God. David played the harp. When the king wanted to hear good music, he called David. So David must knew how to play the harp really well, huh? Jonathan liked David's music too. David and Jonathan had fun together. Of course they did. They were friends. Jonathan showed David around the palace. Oh, so right, remember, Jonathan was the son of King Saul. So he was a prince, which is what they said, right? So he lived in a palace apparently. So David probably did like being friends with Jonathan. He got to see a palace. I would love to see a palace like that, right? That was that not like a palace that was all fallen down and broken down, but because that's a lot of times the palaces now are all falling apart because they used to be there, but then nobody took care of them anymore. It's kind of sad, isn't it? Because we could have beautiful palaces and princes and princesses that lived in the beautiful palaces. He showed him his trophy room. Look at that. There are trophies there. And all his trophies and awards. So Jonathan, he must have been a very good warrior because that's what he was doing. He was a warrior. David had never seen anything like that before. Neither have I. Jonathan said, I would like to give you my royal sword and my royal robe, my belt, and my bow. Oh my gosh, Jonathan must have really liked David because he gave him all those wonderful things from his trophy room, even. Oh my goodness gracious, that's nice. What a nice friend, isn't it? Jonathan and David became best friends from that time on. They had fun together and they always watched out for each other because that's what friendship is, right? We watch out for each other and we help each other, right? Look at this. This is a part of the story that gets a little weird to me. Sometimes King Saul would get mad at David. Once he threw his spear at him, but David jumped out of the way. Jonathan was afraid the king would hurt David. So he said to him, tell me what to do to help you. I will do anything. They made a promise to each other and said, we will be friends forever and we will always help and watch each other. So they made a promise, right? They were giving their word to one another. When we make a promise, we give our word to somebody else. So that was a promise that they made. They gave their word to one another. That was really nice of them to do. And Jonathan was really afraid, and Jonathan was the son of King Saul. Why was King Saul being so mean to David? It doesn't tell us, does it? It doesn't say that, but he threw a spear at David. Oh my gosh. So Jonathan was afraid, it says, and he wanted to help David. When you make a promise in the Bible and you keep that promise forever, because sometimes it's hard to keep our promises. And you know what the Bible tells us? If we can't keep our promises, we shouldn't make our promises. So when people make a promise in the Bible and they keep their promise, you know what? They call that a covenant. A covenant. 3 stops in that word. Covenant. They call that a covenant. In the Bible, when you make a promise and you keep that promise, that is called a covenant. So Jonathan and David made a covenant with one another, a promise, because they kept their word. Jonathan was very afraid for David, and he said he would do anything to help him. What a good friend. Do you think you would help a friend even if somebody was throwing spears at them? Or do you think you would be afraid to help that person? I don't know. I don't know. I like to think I would help, even if I was afraid. I like to think I would help. King Saul still wanted to hurt David. So Jonathan came to David and said, I have a plan. David, you must hide. I will talk to my father to see if he is still very angry with you. Then I will come back and let you know. So Jonathan came to David and said, even though I want you to stay here, you must run far away and hide from the king. It sounds like the king was still mad at David, but we don't even know why he was mad at David, right? We don't even know why. But Jonathan was doing his best to protect David, wasn't he? He was hiding him. So that was really nice. David and Jonathan were sad. They did not want to leave each other. Of course they didn't, because they were good friends. So of course they didn't want to leave each other. Then Jonathan said, "Don't worry, David. We will be best friends forever." Even though Jonathan and David were not together, they were still best friends. So that's how we stay friends, right? Even if we're not together. And that's what's so special about their relationship. They loved each other very, very much, and they took care of each other because they did. And even though they didn't spend a lot of time together, they took care of one another forever. Even in their hearts, right? Even in our hearts, we could take care of people, even when we don't see them anymore, right? Friends are very special people. We help them. We do good things for them. We watch over them. That is what Jonathan did for David. That is what you can do too. That is friendship. Isn't that a great story? I just love the way that Jonathan and David were friends and that they really cared about each other even when they weren't seeing one another, right? Because Jonathan had to send David away in order for Saul not to kill him. And you know what? It doesn't tell us why Saul was angry at David, but I know why Saul was angry at David. Do you want to know why? Saul was angry at David because Saul had a prince of a son who was Jonathan, but Saul knew something. Saul knew that David was supposed to be king, and Saul didn't want David to be king. Saul wanted Jonathan to be king. It's kind of a sad story. It's kind of a sad story because Saul was kind of very greedy, wasn't he? Not even kind of. He was very greedy. Do you know what greedy means? Greedy means that you want everything for yourself. Saul wanted everything for himself, even though it was supposed to be David's. And Saul knew it was supposed to be David's, but he still wanted it for himself. He would be very proud to have his son become king one day, don't you think? I think I would be proud if my son became king one day. I would be very proud. So Saul wanted Jonathan to be king someday, but that wasn't God's plan, it looked like. And Jonathan and David stayed friends. Even though David was supposed to be king someday, Jonathan and David, they had a promise. They made a promise that they would take care of each other and they would help each other. And that's what they did, didn't they? Jonathan was very kind to David, I think. Don't you? Okay, all right. Now, we do want to get to the questions because we want to think about the story right away before we get to any of our vowels. And we want to get to our vowels, our consonants and our vowels. So we get to our alphabet today, right? So let's go ahead and get to our questions that we have. You can see my slide to be right back was not the right slide. Okay, this is a book about right and wrong. And our story on friendship, how is the story about right and wrong? So I'll give you a hint. I want you to talk about this and I want you to think about it. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. But don't forget about Saul. Jonathan did some right things, right? But don't forget about Saul. Saul did some wrong things. What does friendship mean? So we talked about that and we read about it. And if you don't remember what friendship means, you can always go back to that part of the video and find out where I read what it meant. It's not a bad idea to go back over some of the slides that we have. Or, not some of the slides there, but what I was reading, because that helps us remember, and it helps us remember the definition of friendship in this case. How did Jonathan show friendship towards David? I remember he gave him some really cool things, didn't he? He gave him a bow. That would be so cool because you know what? That was like a real bow. It wasn't like a fake bow. It was like a real bow if he gave it to him. And if Jonathan was a real warrior and he was a warrior, then he gave David a real bow, and that would have been pretty cool, right? Not like a play one. It would have been pretty cool. How did David show friendship towards Jonathan? Did David show friendship towards Jonathan? It said that David wanted to be Jonathan's friend, but most of this friendship, it showed Jonathan cared about David, right? That's what it showed. But we know from the story that David cared about Jonathan a lot as well. They really took care of one another. Let's see, I have to pick up my glasses like this in order to see it. Why was Saul mad at David? Well, I told you why he was mad at David, but we didn't know that from the story, right? I told you why, because I know the story, because I've read the story from the Bible, so I know why he was mad. But the story didn't tell us that, right? So that was kind of a hint, and I'm not supposed to be giving you hints. You're supposed to discuss it with somebody else, and then you're supposed to decide what the answer is. How did Jonathan protect David from Saul? Do you have friends? How do you take care of your friends? How do your friends take care of you? Now, it's not so unusual for some people during this time to not have friends. And that has got to be very hard if you don't have any friends. And if you don't have any friends, it must be really hard for you to make friends, isn't it? Right? Well, I'm going to help you kind of make friends. One of the ways to make friends is to we call it being true to yourself. Being true to yourself. You know how you find the best friends? You find the best friends when you find people who like the same things that you like and who kind of think the same way that you think. But they also have to try and give you new ideas, right? Because otherwise your friendship gets old and boring. So they can't be exactly like you because nobody wants somebody exactly like us. We would always know what they were thinking, right? So they have to be different from us, but they have to like to do the same things, right? If I like to color, they have to like to color, or maybe they have to like the same kind of movies I like, right? So they don't have to like everything I like. They could like, I might like the iPhone and they might like you know, the Galaxy, right? Or whatever. They might like a different phone. That's okay. They might like a different sports team than I like, right? That's okay. They don't have to like everything I like, right? But if I want a friend, I have to be able to do things with that friend, like sit down and color, right? I have to be able to do things with that friend. And so I probably want to find somebody who likes doing the same thing I like. So, to be a good friend, I think my advice for you today is to be a good friend is you kind of want to think about what do I like? And if you like things that other people don't like, well, maybe you want to try and find some things that other people do like. Like if you like to step on spiders all day long, maybe you're not going to find a lot of friends, right? But there are probably other things you like to do other than stepping on spiders all day long, right? So find out those things, other things that you like to do that other people might like to do as well, that you really like to do. Maybe you like to ride your bike around the neighborhood, right? So you would find somebody to ride your bike around the neighborhood with, right? And make sure that you can trust that person and make sure that you can trust that family, because that's the reason why a lot of people today are having a hard time with friendships. It's because it's hard to trust somebody else. Do you think that David trusted Jonathan? I do. Of course he did. He trusted him with his life because Jonathan protected David's life. Do you think Jonathan trusted David? I think he did. And the reason why I think he trusted David was because he protected David. And so he must have trusted that David was right and his dad Saul was wrong to be angry with David, right? He must have trusted David. Sometimes it's hard to tell, right? Sometimes it's hard to tell. It was easy to tell that David trusted Jonathan, but sometimes it's not as easy to tell, like it wasn't as easy to tell, did Jonathan trust David? But he must have, right? He must have because he protected him from his own father. Okay, let's move on. That's a little bit more of the story. How do your friends take care of you? So, how do you take care of your friends? And how do your friends take care of you? Because that's real friendship, right? Do you think that David and Jonathan were still friends even years later? What if they never saw each other again? Do you think that they would still be friends? And I know the answer to that question, and the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And I also know that they only saw each other one more time. I think past that story. They don't have it in the story when they saw each other. So one more time they saw each other. And that was it. And then they never saw each other again. And we know that in their hearts, they were best friends, that they loved each other like best friends are supposed to love each other, and they took care of one another. That's what we know about their friendship. They were true friends. David even wrote songs about their friendship. They were so close to one another. So that was just, everybody wants a good buddy like that, a good friend like that. Everybody needs a good friend like that. And it's really a good example to see when other people are friends to one another. So I'm so happy for them. I'm so happy for David and Jonathan. Even though they didn't see each other very much, I'm so happy that they really knew, even though they didn't see each other, that they were best friends. Okay, isn't that a wonderful song by Tyler Braden? I love that song. It is called Brother, is what it's called. If you didn't get that from him saying it 100 times in that song, look it up and have your mom or dad play that for you. And you can see here what the song is about. It's about him being a fireman, isn't it? And look at that. Isn't that a great song for our story? Isn't it? Because don't they have to take care of one another? And don't they have to help one another? And you know what? From that song, I know that they love each other as well. And that is a really nice thing, because no matter whether or not we are friends with boys or whether we are friends with girls, we need people who help us and who take care of us. Let's take a look at that definition, because I'm missing one of the things. If you remember, there were three things in that definition. They help us, they take care of us, and what else? And they play with us is what they do. And the word was actually not take care, but they watch over us. And isn't that a great way to think about it? Because isn't that what firemen do? They don't really take care of us, right? They're not in my house taking care of me, although sometimes I wish that they were. Right? Because we all, gosh, if they were in my house, they could help take care of things for me. That would be kind of nice, wouldn't it? But that's not what it says. It says they watch over us. And that's kind of what they do for one another and for us too. Police officers, they watch over us, right? Sheriffs, who are supposed to be cowboys, kind of like, they watch over us. I think of sheriffs as cowboys, don't you? Like sheriffs. That's how I think of sheriffs. They watch over us. And firemen, they're supposed to watch over us, right? And all kinds of people. Moms watch over their children. Dads watch over their kids as well, right? Neighbors watch out for one another. If I see something in my community, I watch out for those people. That's what we're supposed to do. Not be nosy rosies. We're not supposed to be telling on people and finding out about their business and then telling on them or reporting their business. That's not what David did. That's not what Jonathan did. Jonathan didn't go and report back to Saul what David was doing. That's not what we mean by watching over people so we can go report back, right? What it means is that I know even when, in the case of David and Jonathan, when they weren't there, that somebody was still watching over me. Because that's sometimes their job, isn't it? Police officers, that's their job to watch over people. Firemen, it is their job. And we really appreciate when they do their jobs because we need people to watch over us, don't we? We do. We all need people to take care of us, don't we? We can't do it alone. We like to think we can do it alone, but we can't do it alone. And why would we want to do it alone when we could have a friendship like David and Jonathan had, right? We wouldn't even want to do it alone. Okay. Let's see what else we have. Now what we're doing is we are getting to our alphabet. So should we play the ABC song again? I think we should because I've got coffee on and I got to pour it in my coffee cup. Okay, we're out of time for today, so we're not going to be able to get to our vowels. So likely what we're going to do is we're going to start with our vowels in our alphabet tomorrow, and then we'll get to the story afterwards, okay? So tomorrow's story is going to be on courage. That's what I thought, courage. And we aren't going to find out about David and Goliath. It's a different story of courage. Then it's not David and Goliath. So you might ask your parents or somebody that you can trust if they know the story of David and Goliath. But I got to get out of here because I have to come back here for our Bookless classroom in about 10 minutes now, and I have a lot to do. So I will see you tomorrow, but we are changing our time. So we will be here tomorrow at 8 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock, since I don't get a lot of people up here that early anyway. And school doesn't usually start till 7:20. What am I doing here at 7 o'clock? I don't even know. So I'll be here at 8 o'clock, and we're going to start our day at 8 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. We're going to make a few changes and adjustments because that's what we do. We go with the flow. See you tomorrow at 8.